let's talk about clones. This is Chokcam. Welcome back to my channel where I try to avoid buying expensive keyboards by making semi-regular videos about them instead. Subscribe if you want to see how long I can hold out. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. You've probably heard that quote before, but the full quote is, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. Oscar Wilde wasn't talking about keyboards when he said that, but I've been thinking about how common copying is in our beloved hobby. This is a thorny issue which covers every aspect of mechanical keyboards, but I'm going to focus on keyboard case designs for this video. I found 6 or 7 keyboards that have raised questions about their designs and how far is too far when it comes to taking inspiration from someone else's work. In the world of mechanical keyboards, there are no legal protections when it comes to designs that someone may have spent hundreds of hours and countless late nights labouring over, not to mention hundreds of dollars on prototypes to iron out problems and get everything just right. The only thing stopping someone from copying is pride in making something original, community backlash leading to loss of sales, and common courtesy. That's not always enough, especially when there's money involved. When I saw the Douro 67 and the 50, I immediately thought that they were both very similar to the Rama designed keyboard from Keyclack, the M65A. Both newer boards have ditched the exposed screws of the M65A, which I know a lot of people weren't keen on. There's no acrylic bottom piece, and the addition of a thin blocker to highlight the arrow keys serve to differentiate the Douro 67 from the M65A. The similarities are still really obvious, especially from the top due to the distinctive bezels and chamfered edges. There are some significant differences if you look a little deeper, which make the Douro 67 its own thing rather than a straight up copy. The PCB is going to have a daughter board for the USB connection, which is an interesting change. Another major change is the fact that the Douro 67 will have an integrated plate. That's likely to affect how the board feels once it's built. Hopefully they nailed the height of the board, which made the bottoms of the keycaps visible on the M65A. I really didn't like that once I noticed it. I think the Douro 67 has tried to improve on some areas of the design, which is definitely a good thing. Exclusive's E6-V2 is a stunner in my opinion, with those lovely curves which make it easy to pick up and caress lovingly, and that thick mid-piece design is just ugh. When Kubicek made his interest check for his Pearl follow-up Pandora, he openly admitted that the E6-V2 was one of many keyboards that he drew inspiration from. I think the similarities are definitely there, but he's got enough things mixed in that for me it stands on its own. I do think that the nameplate is such a signature for Exclusive that Pandora is better off without it. Reading through the thread makes it clear that it's a very polarizing issue. The next one is so clear-cut that I don't think anyone could argue that it isn't a straight-up copy with barely any originality other than the price. The Clipper was hugely anticipated prior to its launch and has since been copied by KBD fans in budget form. There's really not much Mekanisk can do in the face of this kind of competition. If a competitor in China can mass-produce a copy of your design and get it to market very quickly, it puts you in an impossible situation. If you own both keyboards and can compare them, you're likely to notice differences in fit and finish and probably QC. However, if you want a handsome looking case for a bargain price, you're likely to get one of the KBD fans boards. Someone new to the hobby might not have even heard of the Clipper. I think it's worth saying that the Clipper is itself standing on the shoulders of cases like the FMJ from way back in the day when we were all buying DCS sets. Duck keyboards represent the epitome of Korean customs for many people, and since they are only usually available in limited numbers at high prices, they aren't exactly accessible. When the IC for the OWL 660 launched, it clearly bore more than a passing resemblance, with only those extra keys to make the small 60% into a more usable option for many. Other than that, there wasn't much to say about the design. With the feet being such a recognisable part of the Viper, it kind of come as a shock to the designer of the OWL 660 that people commented on it. In their defense, it is a different form factor that Duck hasn't covered yet. The design then changed, then people said it was generic and boring. Who'd be a keyboard designer? The Duck Blackbird takes the 1-800 layout and squashes it, removing the F-row. It then adds 2 keys between the numpad and the rest of the keyboard. The AL1 did pretty much the same, removing the RGB middle piece and adding some less interesting indicator LEDs next to the numpad, and a long thin weight. In these comparison shots, you can see the feet and the underside of the AL1 look simpler. Checking through the group by thread, it looks like there were some major quality control issues from dented and scratched cases to poorly anodized parts. I I think part of buying a duck is that you know that the whole process is overseen by someone who is probably way more obsessive about details than you are, and that QC will be on point. In most of the interest checks that I've seen, people aren't shy about calling designers out if they think a case is too similar to something that already exists. I think this is fair and part of the interest check process if it's done respectfully. Most designers are willing to defend their designs and explain their choices or make changes if needed. You can get around all these issues if you don't post interest checks at all. If you look on Taobao, you can find more clones. I think the makers of boards like the Fake Canoe, Fanu, benefit from their distance from the big community sites like Geekhack and Reddit. Since they don't have a public face and they're in China, they can pretty much do what they like and not worry what people say. I can barely find the search bar on Taobao, let alone find anything without having a link first, so that provides an extra layer of insulation from scrutiny.
Hot dog!
As a consumer, it's great to have the option of buying a keyboard with a nice design if you missed out on the original. Even better if the price is less. But I think that blatant copying will damage the community over time. If manufacturers don't have the creativity and skill to come up with original designs and make it impossible for those that do to compete, we're going to see fewer cool designs in the long run, and that's bad for everyone. That's why open interest checks are vital and why people shouldn't be afraid to critique new designs. Let me know what you think in the comments, since I'm not young enough to know everything.